Hey everyone, welcome to the Light Stand. We are Art and Natalie, and today we have a very special guest with us, Nancy Castañeda.
Woo!
Thank you for joining us, Nancy.
Hi.
Nancy is a clinical mental health counselor. I know you specialize with teenagers, crisis and trauma, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, tell us your story, Nancy. Like, how did what made you get into that, first of all? Like, what piqued your interest with that?
Well, I've been in therapy since my early 20s.
Okay.
I grew up with an absent mother. She left my dad when I was 10. And because of that, there's years and years of trauma that goes with abandonment issues. And I was the ideal teenager that was always getting in trouble. I went down a rough path for a while because, when you're that age, you are striving for attention. And so when I became a mother at 22, I realized that in order to be like the best mother that I could be for her, I needed to heal. And so especially, her being born and getting the diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I knew that in order to be a great mother, I needed to heal. And so I started therapy in my early 20s, and I've been in therapy ever since.
That's awesome.
And I see multiple therapists to heal multiple things, trauma. I did marriage counseling with my now husband.
Okay.
Because, when you come from somebody that has dealt with a lot of trauma to somebody that hadn't, the relationship had its issues. And so we had to go to therapy to resolve those issues and to resolve what my trauma did to our relationship, right?
Wow.
So finally in my 30s, I hit like 34. I had been a stay-at-home mom since my daughter was born, not really out of choice, out of, necessity. I had to be her caregiver. And so I wanted to do something for myself. And I knew that I had the tools and the resources and the education and the life experiences to be able to offer my services and to teenagers that were in my position, right?
Wow.
So I went back to school.
Nice.
And got my bachelor's and working on my master's. And my goal is to work with teenagers mostly because I really want to hit that pivotal age, because being a teenager is just hard. And being a teenager in today's society is even harder.
For sure.
And so I want to focus on trauma and crisis for individuals that need it the most, because, the kids are our future. And so I want to be able to help them. And so, that's, I never thought I'd be a therapist, and I sometimes laugh at myself because I'm like, where did I get myself into? But it was the first time in my life that I dove head first.
Wow.
And usually, like, I believe I have ADD because I can be, but when I really am passionate about something, there's nothing that can stop me.
You. Right.
And so I dove head first, and I went to school, and I'm just going at it. And
That's awesome.
And I love it. It's something that is it's a great passion of mine.
Wow.
And so, that's how I came to be, and we could probably dive deeper into that as we go.
Yeah, of course.
But that's how I decided to take this path to be a therapist.
Awesome. Well, kudos to you, because, knowing that you were bringing a child to this world and you knew that you had to fix those issues to become a better person for your daughter, for your kids.
Yeah. And I think when when you're pregnant, you try to envision yourself as a parent, as a mother. And I didn't have an example.
Yeah.
Like my mother, she's in the picture, you know, but she wasn't a mother. That she never gave me the tools that I needed to become a good mom. And so I was very fearful of like, am I going to be the right mom? Am I going to be able to do this? Yeah. It even came to the point where am I going to be able to be affectionate enough? Because I was never loved like that as a child. And so you have all these thoughts and all these worries when you're pregnant. And so, so I knew there was just no way. And then when she was born and she had Down syndrome, it was a layer on top of that.
Wow.
And so I knew deep down that if I didn't take the steps to heal from all the trauma that I had endured as not having a mother and all the things that I went through and the road that I took myself down because of an absent mother, I knew that I needed to do that for the sake of both of my kids now that I have 2 kids, but primarily for my daughter.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was going to be a whole other challenges that I didn't even know what was coming.
Right.
And so I really needed to heal that part of me. And so I've done the work.
That's awesome.
And and it hasn't been easy.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's, and my husband can attest to the challenges that he's even had to.
Yeah.
Had to endure going down this journey with me.
Wow.
And I'm very blessed
Of course.
that he's still there and that he still loves me and that, we've taken this journey together and we're still a unit because some people can't take that road with their partner when heavy rooted trauma is involved and you're trying to heal those things because it's a challenge.
It is. And thank you for sharing that. Like I can speak from experience where I also came from different type of trauma, but the difference with me is when I had my kids, I didn't know I had that trauma or I didn't know what I was looking at. I thought it was me being insecure and that was it until I started going to therapy and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have all these things that I haven't talked about and all these years of that I could have worked on or started therapy a little earlier or avoided all these arguments with my husband. I mean, but I didn't know any better. But now it's like I started going to therapy. I stopped for a little bit, but man, thank you so much for sharing. Like that's awesome. I think with you, I can relate with you, and I think my husband can relate to Jaime too. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It is.
It's not easy. I would like for you to kind of expand on what's the difference between someone who has trauma of that abandonment and puts their foot down to say, I'm not going to repeat this pattern, to someone who has that same trauma and says, well, that's how I grew up, so I'm just gonna do the same thing over, No,
I think it takes a lot of self-awareness. And it's because it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror and pick apart all those ugly parts of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't want to do that because it's a lot harder to fix than to turn around and ignore it, right? Because the fixing and the seeing yourself raw and there's a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of those emotions that a lot of people are not comfortable with. Yeah. And so it's a lot easier to deny it, to walk away, to turn around and say, oh, it's just the way it is, right?
Right.
Than to sit there and look at yourself and be like, I can change this and I can break the cycle and I can do the work, because it becomes your responsibility to do so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to really take that stance and take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is what I need to do to change it. And it's not going to be easy. And I'm going to have to, break down and, strip myself of this facade and this everything and become completely vulnerable. And that's one thing that a lot of people cannot do. They cannot be vulnerable with themselves or with other people. So they choose not to heal because it's easier.
Right.
It's easier. Like, for example, my mother. We're going to get into my mother, conversation about my mother. But my mother had a really hard life. And so there's a lot of horrible trauma that happened to my mother. And that is the reason she was the mother she was to me. But she has chosen not to take accountability, not to do the work, not to take a hard look at herself. And now she's now already going to be 70 something and is still stuck in her ways and has a really tainted relationship with all three of her children. And I know there's a part of her that wants that relationship because she tries. But there is such a hard wall between her and the rest of us that she's like, she can't do the work. She's like now so set in her ways, and she's so much older that she doesn't want to do the work. So what's going to happen now? We're never going to break through that barrier, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And so I just think that it's really hard. It's really hard to be vulnerable. It's really hard to take a hard look at yourself. It's really hard to do the work.
Right.
And so, and that's my answer, is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it's very hard in our society to do the work.
The work. Right. Yeah. And you said it perfectly. I feel like you said, being vulnerable and the work, it's hard from experience. I had to talk about things that I had probably blocked off in my mind, and relive those things by talking about them. It was hard.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't want to really relive those moments, and they would just rather not, like you said, not work on themselves.
Yeah.
But if you have children, especially if you have children, it's so important to get rid of those things so that you can know how to love your children and show that affection and not do those mistakes.
Yeah. Because it's true. Like it's that saying that you bleed all over the people around you if you don't heal what's broken, right?
Right.
And it's so true, because and I knew that, and I knew that, and I knew that, and I was like, I'm not going to do this to my kids. I'm not going to do what my mother did to me, to my children. And so I knew if I didn't heal and if I didn't do the work, I would have repeated the same patterns, and we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
And so I had to just dive in, and it wasn't easy. It was probably one of the hardest things in my life that I ever did, because not only was I abandoned by my mother, but because I was abandoned by my mother, I was left with my dad, which, bless his heart, we have such a great relationship now, but he didn't know how to be a parent, a full-time parent, let alone to a 10-year-old girl. So he made a lot of mistakes. And because he made all those mistakes, I went down a bad road of experimenting with drugs, moving out of my house, getting in toxic relationship with men that were abusive and terrible to me. And that one thing of my mom leaving me, the abandonment issue, led to countless amounts of trauma that I had to end up healing from, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to do this to my kids. So sometimes there has to be a person that is very self-aware of their trauma in order to take the steps to heal. But it's hard. It's hard to get there because it's very easy. It's a lot easier to ignore it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot easier to ignore it. And I did that for many, many years.
Yeah.
But, then to do the work, it's definitely a lot easier.
Oh.
I know trauma, the word trauma, in the sense of a mental health issue, is a relatively new term, at least to me. Mm-hmm. It's something that we recently started learning about, as Natalie was going through her healing process, and everything like that. One thing that I keep hearing you say is self-awareness, and you have to make the decision, and you have to be able to look in the mirror. So there's a lot of self-responsibility, of personal responsibility that you take. But what about, like, how do you know that you're that person? How do you know that you're that person that has trauma to say, okay, I have this trauma. How do I go about healing it? Because there's people. So let me give you an example. The typical Mexican machista. You're laughing because you probably already know where this is going. That guy, aquí solo truenan mis chicharrones. Like, woman, you're gonna submit and you're gonna play house and you're gonna do what I say when I say it, and I'm gonna control the finances, and you only get to do what I let you do, and kind of like that mindset. Like I'm going like really hardcore Mexican machista type of person. Drinks and is abusive in all kinds of ways. Verbally, emotionally, even physically. If you tell that guy, hey, you have trauma that you definitely need to heal, he's gonna say, I ain't got nothing. Like, I have no issues, right? He could either be completely ignorant to the fact that he has trauma that he needs to heal, or chooses to not see the truth. You know what I mean? So what about those people? Like the ones that everyone that is trauma informed knows that they have trauma, but they just don't either see it, or, you know what I mean? Like, what about those guys? Like, how do they get to a point to say, okay, I need to fix this?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's a tough question because I think mental health in general is very taboo. It's very taboo, especially, in the culture that I grew up in, Mexican Catholic, right?
Yeah.
When I wanted to be a mental health counselor, I got a lot of looks, like, why would you want to do that?
Oh, wow.
From my family.
Really?
Yes, because none of them go to therapy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. None of my family. It's a very taboo subject.
Yeah.
So they saw it like that's a negative? That's what you wanted to study? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, they saw it as a negative because it's a taboo subject. Mental health is not speaked on enough.
Right.
Not spoken on enough.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, until the dialogue and until people start looking at mental health differently, that's never going to change.
Mm-hmm.
People are never going to, especially for men, mental health looks like a weakness. It's a weakness to them, to a lot of men.
Yeah.
And so until the dialogue starts to change about mental health and how everybody needs some kind of mental health maintenance, everybody does.
Yeah.
You're always going to have those people that don't think anything's wrong with them. And I'm not saying that everybody suffers from something when it comes down to mental health. Yeah. And I am a strong believer of that. Nobody's perfect. We all grow up with some kind of family trauma, some kind of event trauma. This world is a crazy place. We see it all over the place. And now with social media, it's even elevated and it's even enhanced. But yet the dialogue about mental health has not changed when we need it the most. And so, unfortunately, you're not going to have people taking accountability for their own mental health when the dialogue around mental health is still very taboo and not talked about enough.
Yeah.
And then I feel for men especially, because I feel like they have this pressure to be strong, to be the breadwinner, to be these men that don't have mental health issues and can't be weak, can't be looked at as weak. So you get a lot of those like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'm fine. And, you know, I see it with my dad and my husband all the time. Like, you know, I can tell when Jaime is overworked and when he needs a break, but he won't do it. He won't take the breaks and he won't do the work that he needs to do to take care of himself because he doesn't want to be perceived as weak.
Wow.
And my dad's the same way. And my dad's Mexican and Catholic. And he doesn't want to be perceived as weak. So even when he's having health issues, he still does the same thing. He won't go to the doctor. And it's the same thing with your mental health. So I think that question's hard to answer because I think in order for it to change or for people to see things differently, the talk around mental health also needs to change.
Agreed.
So that it's not so taboo and that men need more support in that area to not make them see that just because they're seeking help for mental health or for traumas that they have experienced in their life, they're not perceived as weak. It's perceived as okay. That everybody needs mental health maintenance. Everybody does. Everybody needs to take care of their mental health. And so for that, it's not a black and white question. It really isn't.
Very true.
Yeah, I could feel that it's very loaded. I'm a 90s kid. I was born in the 80s. Mid
86.
Thanks, babe.
We're all 90s kids here.
But, you know, growing up in the 90s is okay. Natalie's over here.
Are we recording?
Growing up in the 90s, I grew up with hip-hop. Love hip-hop, love rap, and, you know, Biggie, Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop, right? All these guys.
I'm there with you.
You know, Wu-Tang. As I listen to the lyrics now as a father, I'm like, holy moly, there's a lot of trauma with a lot of these guys. You know, growing up and you know, a common thing with a lot of the hip hop community is growing up without a father. Growing up fatherless. My dad was in jail. My dad was shot. My dad was a gangbanger. You know, he got locked up, you know, selling drugs, or he killed somebody or whatever. And you hear like very angry, you know, lyrics or music. So from your perspective, like it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, Nancy, because, you know, the community, at least, you know, at least in the 90s and in the culture, the hip hop culture, was centered around that. And then these people become famous and they're putting out this music with these lyrics, and then kids are listening to it. You know, I think I started listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony when I was in elementary, you know, third grade ish, right? I'm still kind of learning English at this point, but you know, because my first language is Spanish. I grew up in Juarez. But you know, just soaking in this culture, this mindset, you know, of, you know, I gotta hustle and I gotta be a strong this or whatever. So I can see how, I guess, society, culture, whatever, you know, mainstream media, not mainstream media, like what's popular, right? In the culture at that moment can influence your thought process growing up, even though you didn't grow up the way they grew up. You know, like my dad wasn't locked up. My dad wasn't, you know, my dad was present there. He wasn't emotionally there, but he was physically there. And then that's how I guess you kind of adopt that mindset of you got to be strong and men don't cry and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I'm still very interested though in how did you come to the realization, Nancy, that you were like, okay, well, I'm trying to point the question the right way. How did you identify that there was a mother abandonment issue? Because I think there's people that don't know that. You know, I didn't realize that I had a absent emotionally father until last year, 2-3 years. I don't know, a couple years ago maybe. It was very recent, right, babe?
Yeah.
That I kind of went through that whole healing thing.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's different for everybody. You know, I hit sort of a rock bottom for myself before I met Jaime and became pregnant. And so I was already going through this transition of like, this is not what I want for my life. I don't want drugs. I don't want partying. I don't want any of this, you know? And so I met Jaime, and then I got, mine and Jaime's relationship happened very quickly. And I got pregnant pretty quickly. We weren't even married yet. I got pregnant pretty quickly. And so I was painfully sober for like the first time in a really long time because I was pregnant. So I wasn't drinking. I wasn't numbing my emotions anymore.
Wow.
So when you're not numbing, you start to think. You can think clearer. You can really start evaluating your life. You can really start doing all the things because there's nothing numbing. Because that's all I did for so many years. I numbed it with substances and with partying and with doing all those crazy things that I was doing. And I wasn't numbed anymore. So I started thinking clearly, and I started realizing, oh crap, like I need to really change, and I really need to. I knew that my mom booked it. She left my dad for another woman. So we can get into that conversation because my religious trauma comes from that aspect, right? And so she left, and she wanted nothing to do with us for a long time. She was very mean and hateful and did really messed up things. And she was drinking a lot and partying a lot. And so the abandonment of my mother came really early. The realization that my mom checked out came really early in my life. But I didn't realize how bad it affected me until I became pregnant and I was sober.
Wow.
Because I was just so angry and full of hate and full of anger. And I was just doing anything to numb these feelings. And I was terrible at school, and I was out all night and partying and all these things. And it wasn't until I had to sit there and really take a hard look. And I was like, oh, crap.
Wow.
You know, and I know the root cause of it, because before my mom left, I was a great student. I never got into trouble, you know, and I knew the common denominator of all my troubles was the day she left.
Wow.
And so.
You said you were 10?
Yeah.
When she left?
I was 10 when she left. And that's the thing. Like I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to church every Sunday. I did my Holy Communion, my confirmation, catechism. I did the whole thing. And so I was a good kid until my mom left. And I think the anger fueled me to the point. And then my dad wasn't, bless his heart, he tried, but he wasn't there either. So I was on my own a lot.
Wow.
What happens when you have a kid that's on their own a lot, that's angry?
Oh, yeah.
She's going to...
Yeah.
She's
Rebel.
she's going to rebel, and she's going to be a terror. But I think the answer to your question, I guess, is for me, the time I realized a lot of things about myself and why I was doing the things that I did and how hard it was being left by a mother is when I became pregnant. I realized I was going to be a mother. I was scared I was going to be a mother. Started questioning my ability to be a mother.
Wow.
And I was sober. And I had to really think about it and really work through those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for everybody, I think the aha moment is different for everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hit rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Jaime, got pregnant, and then I was sober, and I really had to. And I was pregnant. And being a mom, you're like sitting there looking, wanting to do all the right things. And so you really have to take a hard look at yourself and figure out how you got here and where you go from there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to realize that, you know, everybody has that moment. Addicts have that moment. Some don't ever have that moment, but they all have that moment and realize, crap, I gotta change. Something has to be different.
Yeah.
But it's different for everybody. Not everybody's gonna look the same.
Yeah.
That aha moment's not gonna look the same for everybody. And I always tell, like, people laugh, but I always sit there and I look at my daughter and I always say she's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because she saved me.
Wow. Literally.
Yeah. Because if I didn't become pregnant and I didn't want that, I didn't have that inner instinct that I wanted to be a good mother to her, and I was going to do everything in my power to be that mother to her, I don't know where I would be right now.
Wow.
And so I love her with all of my heart because I know she was given to me.
Yeah.
Because I needed to be saved, and I needed my life to go in another direction, because if I didn't, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
So I think that moment for everybody is just different. And for me, it was getting pregnant.
Wow. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing that. Like, you almost moved me to tears. Like, wow, I appreciate it, like, honestly. And like you said, I think those aha moments are very different for everyone. I think my aha moment was when Art told me, like, you know what, we were already married, and if you listened to our other podcast earlier, the one previously, we were always breaking up. So that was because we were dating, so there was not that commitment of marriage. So it was easier. And now that we were married, he gave me that, not ultimatum, but like, he said, you know what, you keep doing this, you're going to push me away, like, or I'm not going to love you like I love you now. And I'm like, oh crap, like, I don't want to lose him forever. So I said, you know what, I need to get help.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my kids to be left without, not left without a father, but more of not see us together.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, I need to change. And it's still something I'm working on. But I think as long as you know that you have that issue and you're willing to work on it, I think that's all you need. That you're willing to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes it takes like almost like not an ultimatum, but like something that sits there and was like, oh, I don't want to lose that. Or I don't want to like let this go. I got to change, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they tell you, like, when people are addicted, that you have to give them an ultimatum, or you have to cut them off, or you have to make them feel it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that they're going to come out of whatever.
Yeah.
And some people don't, but some people do.
Right.
Some people, that's all it takes is that hard love, or that, tough love is what they like to call it, right? But yeah, sometimes for some people it looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to that question on how people make the realization they have trauma, or make the realization they have something that they need to work on, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
And I think for people, it needs to be something that they truly love, or that they truly don't want to lose, or to take a good look at themselves,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing for me and Jaime.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times, he almost walked out on me. He could probably tell you. I don't want to think about it. But it's because even though I've been in therapy for so long, and even though I started this process when my daughter was born almost 15 years ago, it takes time.
Yeah.
And so the first 5-10 years of our marriage, it seems like it's been a roller coaster, because I was still doing the work and still trying to heal and but I'm a completely different person now than I was then.
Before.
But yeah, I almost lost him a couple of times.
Wow.
And it was almost like I needed that push to keep on doing the work, and to keep pushing forward, and to keep, it was a kind of like my, because I don't want my kids to grow up in a broken home.
Right.
I know what that does to people. I know what it does to me.
Yeah.
And what it did to me, and I don't want that for my kids. Even if we're both great parents individually, we still love each other, it's still worth working out. I do not want to lose that. And so it was, but yeah, I get it, because it happened to me multiple times. And, I thank him all the time that he stuck it out, and that we're at where we are, because I finally feel like we're kind of over that hump, and now we're getting there, right?
Good.
You can see see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of all the work that we've done,
That's
and I
awesome.
do feel bad, because I know a lot of because he went to therapy, but it was because of me, because of all the crap I put him through, But anyways,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
As Natalie's been going through her healing journey, I became very interested in trauma, and I like knowing. I'm a geek. I'm a nerd for a lot of things, but I'm like, okay, well, if she's gonna go through this, I want to know what's up with this, So, started looking into psychology books and stuff like that. There's this one, I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but the book is called Do the Work. And then there's another book that it's a little bit easier for me to read, and it's called The Body Remembers, or
the body keeps score.
The Body Keeps Score.
Yes.
Have you read the book?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm loving it so far. And
That's a great book for trauma too.
Man, dude,
Great book for trauma.
It's so good. But it made me realize that, and the point of this is teenagers. So I want to take you kind of back to like when I was a teenager a little bit. I realized, and I don't know the name of this trauma, and I don't even know if to call it trauma, but my dad he was always physically there, but he never did the I love you. He never did the affection. He never was like, hey, I'm proud of you. Great job, Tiger, whatever. So looking back in my childhood, I can very clearly see where I was pretty much performing to get that, sports, I was trying to be the star, and then they put me in karate, and I was trying to beat this kid to a pulp, just so that I can get hey man, great job or something. And it was never enough. Like I would never get it, um academically. I struggled in school. Not because I'm not smart. School was very boring for me. Like I never liked school. So, the standard at my house was always you need to have A's and B's. A, B honor roll, nothing less is acceptable. So when I would bring home those A's and B's, I was expecting, hey man, great job, dude. Like, you can do it or whatever. And he's sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner. I come in, I bring the report card, looks at it, just nods, muy bien, and that's it. And I'm like, man, I busted my tail for this, man, and that's all I get,
Yeah.
But if I got a bad grade, if I got a failing thing, if I failed one test or anything, oh man, it was an hour lecture of how this is not acceptable, y no seas burro, and stuff like that. So fast forward into my teenage years, I started gravitating towards, and I know this now that I'm trauma informed a little bit. I'm not an expert, but now I look back at my friendships, and literally every single of my friends, like my close friends, all of them either had an absent father or an uninvolved father. Every single one. It's five of my best friends back in school. And it's so funny how we all gravitated toward each other and started giving each other validation that we weren't getting from our father. Mm-hmm. All of us. So the first time I smoked weed, I was 14. By the time I was 16, I was pretty much hooked. Like I loved smoking weed back then, right? Getting drunk. I started getting drunk a lot, just with my buddies. That's what we did. It was fun. It was great. 8 Mile came out with Eminem, and that movie. Yeah, okay. It's so cool that you know that movie, dude. I got out of that theater. It was me and my boys. I think 3 of them. We watch it together, dude. We come out and we're like, "That's it, guys. We're gonna go to MTV. Like, we're gonna make we're gonna make records, and we're gonna be rappers, right? Remember?"
Yeah. He went through his phase, and he was actually good.
I gotta hear it.
He was, and yeah, I mean, he went through that phase. So
we were like, dude, we're gonna be rappers, and we're gonna make it big in this. So I don't know if any of you listening remember, but there was this club back in the day called Club Vilari. And they had, after 8 Mile came out, they had like freestyle Fridays. And then
was it downtown?
Downtown.
Yeah, it was downtown.
And then we'd go, we'd battle, lyric rap or whatever. Well, you know what? This is not even the point of what I'm trying to get to here. The point is that now looking back, I can see, if y'all want an episode on that, let me know. I hope you don't, but I'm probably edit that up. Anyways, looking back, I can see how subconsciously maybe my smoking and my drinking and trying other drugs. I tried a whole bunch of stuff. I think I was more of trying to get attention, trying to get that. I think I was just getting attention, and you know what? It felt good because my friends were like, "Oh, dude, if you smoke this much, now you're cool. If you can drink 6 beers, now you're really cool. If you can get these many girls, man, now you're just on the elite level of cool, And then I started kind of forming an idea of what a man is that is so far from the truth. But it was skewed just because that's kind of what we grew up around, I guess. So do I regret what I went through? No, because it wouldn't make me who I am. And I can now, like, now that I have teenagers, we can tell them, hey dude, I've been there. Mm-hmm. I've smoked that, I've drank that, I've done that, I've snorted that, whatever, and it's not what you think or whatever, right? I've been there, done that. but more for the teenager that's listening right now. You know, more for those guys that maybe they have uninvolved parents. You know, maybe they're growing up without a mother. Maybe they're growing up without a father. From your perspective, like what could you, you know, how could you kind of give them some advice? How could you maybe give them some comfort that, you know what, everything's gonna be okay? Like it does feel like it sucks so bad at that moment, you know, right now, that maybe you don't have a dad, maybe you don't have a mom. But how could you, you know, from your perspective, Nancy, tell them, hey, look, you know, trauma is a real thing, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I think for everything, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think for teenagers, it's hard they only see what's in front of them, right? They don't see what like the future holds, or they're kind of just going like step by step. You know, and I think for anybody that's feeling like a loss of an absent parent or an absent mother, you know, I think to always remind a child that they are not forgotten, that they are loved, whether it be by, you know, God, I guess, if you believe in that, or by the people that are around them, right? Because I think that's what a lot of teenagers try to seek: validation, love, all these things, you know, especially when they're not getting it at home. But I think teenagers are so difficult because it's like they think they know it all. Yeah. They, you know, they think they're invincible. They think, you know, that nothing can touch them, type of thing. They have this mentality of just grandeur, right? Yeah. And but I think it's tough to let them know that everything in life is temporary. What they're feeling is temporary. What they're going through is temporary. There's always a better way. And, you know, to let people know that they are who they surround themselves with. So if they surround themselves with a bunch of kids that are doing all those things, that's what they're gonna become, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's important to make sure that you encourage kids to foster relationships that are good for them. Right. And it's hard. Oh, yeah. It's hard, you know. It's like dangling a shiny penny in front of teenagers. Yeah. It's hard to like make them look the other way, right? You know, and God, that's such a difficult question, right? It's so hard because it's just, you can sit there and tell a kid that they're loved and that it gets better and they're going to be okay, and it's up to them to take it as far as they need to take it, right? You can't force them, unfortunately. I think giving teenagers a safe place to land and to fall is very important. Wow. Because I didn't have that. I didn't have a soft place to land, and so I was always trying to struggle to find it, right? You know, and I look back now and I wish I had a community outside the home. Right. And I think that's why a lot of people seek churches and seek out religion, you know, but I was going through my own issues with religion, right? So I ran as far as I could, but I think religion and a church and a community outside the home is very important for children, because they need a safe place to feel accepted and loved and encouraged, right? So I think that it's just, I think we just live in a very difficult world and time. I think it's hard to parent teenagers nowadays with social media. Oh my
gosh. Yes. Let's go there.
Yes, we can go there, because I think it's hard, because we can sit there and we can tell our kids all we want. Right. But if they have the internet and social media at their fingertips, it's super hard to really give them everything that they need, because they're going to go and they're going to look in their phones and they're going to be inundated with all this information that their little brains don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
And so I think that's hard.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, I love that you touch on that, because that was like on my mental list of like, make sure to ask this.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a great point. Like, we didn't when you and I were teenagers. When we were teenagers, we didn't have social media, and it was still, Facebook and MySpace, I guess, kind of started. Yeah. But that was like right after we were seniors. Yeah. So it wasn't really part of our teenage life per se.
Yeah, no, not at all.
No, not at all.
The Razor phone was. Remember the Motorola Razor? Dude.
That was my first phone.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I think
mine was a Nokia.
We had the same one, Mama.
Yeah. Did we?
Yeah. Remember you could change like the plastic on it, like the face,
the cover, the face.
And Televista, they would sell like these like the colorful plastic faces or whatever, like if you wanted pink or blue or whatever, and then the little buttons.
That's true.
The one that you could play. Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
You could the phone that you played Snake on.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
That's so true. Wow.
Yeah.
We're dating ourselves.
Well, so anyhow, that
now everybody knows how old we are.
Yeah. So that childhood, right? That teenage life is way different. It had its own struggles.
Yeah.
But fast forward to now, like you said, Nancy, it is a lot harder. But from your professional perspective, how does social media make it that much more challenging for teenagers now?
Oh yeah. I have a whole idea of social media.
Let's do it.
I will not let my child have a social media account until he's 18. And I say that now, and it might change, but I am really, really, really passionate about not having him access to social media until he's 18. Mm-hmm. And it's because social media is a hard world to navigate for anybody. Let alone a child that's still trying to figure out who they are, has self-esteem issues, has all sorts of things, hormonal issues. Yeah. It's hard because it's proven to give unrealistic standards, which causes anxiety and depression. Yeah. Because these kids do not know how to handle that. And then on top of that, bullying. Bullying's a huge issue.
For sure.
For social media. I always tell Jaime, I was like, I don't think I would have survived high school.
Oh, no.
If I had social media.
No.
There's no way. And I sit there and I look back at all the things that I did. If there was a record of that, I wouldn't have made it out.
Yeah.
And I just think that social media is not... in the sad part about social media and the internet is that it has good qualities. It can unite people. It can give people a voice. It can do all these good things. But I don't think it's appropriate for teenagers.
No, not at all.
I think teenagers cannot handle social media. Their brains cannot handle social media. Their emotions cannot handle social media. I think it changes you as a person in a lot of ways. And I don't think that teenagers are ready for it. And so I always tell because my son is a typical boy that likes video games. What do you think he wants to do with his life? YouTuber, right? And I'm like, no. And I feel bad. I told him, I was like, when you're 16, if you still want to be YouTube, I'll let you do a YouTube channel, but I'm going to have you monitor it, and I'm not going to allow you to look at the comments. And you're not allowed to have social media until you're 18. And so he's like, well, what happens when I have a phone? I was like, I'm giving you a flip phone.
We had the same conversation, remember? With our boys.
Did you end up giving them a flip phone?
No, they started.
They have their iPhone.
Yeah, they have. But we have an app though, called Covenant Eyes. Phenomenal app. It automatically filters out any adult content whatsoever. It well, let me backtrack. iPhone has this thing where you have screen time. So whoever is the parent or the the moderator on your family. You set up your little family there. You can set up the apps, how long they have on that app, adult content and this and that. So we have that, like for example, their games, we have a certain, I have a 2-hour time limit on like the games that they can play on their phone. YouTube, I have a time limit of 1 hour that they can watch YouTube on their phone. I get text all the time because they're asking for more time. And it's like, well, it depends, right? If they're doing whatever. But you can filter certain websites, like you can block them. Excuse me, like I know TikTok, we have it blocked completely, even from our phones.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, we don't want to even open up that can of Pandora's box there. There's so much garbage on TikTok. But on top of, so thank you, Apple. I don't know if you're listening, but thank you for that because that's really cool. But on top of that, we installed something called Covenant Eyes my pastor told me about. So if any explicit images come up on their screen, it will screenshot it and send it to you as the moderator or as the accountability partner. It's really cool.
Wow.
It's technically an anti-porn app. So I have it installed on my phone because I told them, like, look, I'm leading by example.
Yeah.
Like I have it on my phone, and if I try to even look up something that I shouldn't, my accountability partner is my pastor, my lead pastor. So if I look up any porn website, if a girl comes out in a bikini on my phone, it will screenshot it. Like the phone, like the screen detects how much skin there is, and it'll screenshot and send an email. Hey, so-and-so was looking at a potentially dangerous website or whatever. So right now they're big into working out.
Yeah.
So their YouTube feed is full of shirtless guys lifting weights. Yeah. So I get blown up all the time by the app saying your kid's probably looking at something they shouldn't, but no, it's all guys bench pressing and lifting and this and that. But hey, just the fact that I have that peace of mind that they have their phones, but I don't have to worry about them visiting any kind of craziness because it'll get blocked, it'll get reported. And the fact that I have it on my phone too, so that they know, because they're teenagers, like you said, they're special. You got to tread carefully around that age. It's, look, I'm leading by example, dude. I'm not going to walk the talk. I'm not going to walk my talk.
Walk the walk.
I'm going to walk the walk. I'm so confused on how to say. What am I trying to say here?
Well, that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk the talk, right? Yeah. Walk the talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Walk the talk.
Like I'm gonna back up what I say.
Right.
I'm not gonna say something and then do something
like
different.
Doubting myself. No.
No, me too. I'm like, wait.
What's it say?
Yeah.
So anyway, I digress.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, social media and the internet. It's just like I feel for kids. I feel for kids because I think it's just too much information.
Yeah.
For them to be able to handle, and then they can't deal with it. Like they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So it causes anxiety and insecurities and all these things in these brains, these developing brains of these children. And it's just, my son's 9. I don't know what I'm going to do once he's a teenager because the conversation's going to be very different. But right now I'm like, no, stay. And it surprises me that some of his kids, some of 9-year-old friends have smartphones with TikTok and all sorts of social media. And I'm like, no, like, you know how damaging that is going to be to your child. But, that's just, yes, no, parents, and it sucks because I do have social media. And it's a double-edged sword in the sense that I do have social media and I'm sitting here telling my son, but I tell him when you're 18, you're technically an adult. I can't really stop you. Yeah. But I'm hoping that I give you enough tools in life to realize what you should be doing on social media and what you shouldn't be doing on social media. But But I despise social media. I think it's damaging our youth. I think the internet's damaging our youth. I think the little internet's on the palms of your hands is damaging our youth.
Sure.
And then we live in a society where there's constant struggles and trauma-induced events that happen, like shootings and stuff like that are at their fingertips, that they have access to, that they have to hear about and they have to read about. And can you imagine what that does to a child's development and brain? It's having them grow up with just trauma, even if they have great families.
Yeah.
That little device looking
That's
at
gonna give
things.
them anxiety. I mean, just the fact of, oh my gosh, they're shooting a school again, and them reading about that and finding out through there instead of you telling them or talking to them about it. Oh,
yeah,
like you said,
and then bullying is terrible.
Yeah,
it's 10 times worse because people are more confident to do it behind a screen than into your face.
The keyboard warriors.
Yes. It's just, I despise it. I despise it for kids. I'm so lucky that Kira's a teenager. She has Down syndrome. She has no interest. You know, because some of her little peers, too, have access. They have interest in social media. My daughter doesn't. So let's keep it that way. Because I don't want to have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
Because and I tell Alexandra all the time, I'm like, social media's, it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not good for you.
So clinically, right, what does it do to a developing mind of a teenager? I've read anything from getting addicted to likes to self-esteem issues, where people are making comments about your ears and your nose and you're not, girls, if they post a picture, it's like, oh, can you show a little more cleavage? And then, and then it's just more and more and more.
And there's been research proven that social media has the same effects on the brain as use of illicit drugs.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Because kids can actually get addicted. To social media and to the implications of social media and to the likes and to the because for example, can you imagine somebody posting a TikTok and it getting so many likes instantly? It's that instant gratification of like, oh my God, these people like me. Oh my God. Kids that want that or need that, it's a dopamine effect is what it is.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a dopamine effect, and so they become addicted to that feeling of, oh, I'm liked. But what happens when they post something that somebody doesn't like? And then it's a bunch of hate. What do you think that does? It's an opposite effect, and then they become depressed and they become anxious, and then they sit there and they try to fix it or try to justify themselves or try to make content to make it better because they're chasing that dopamine feeling.
Wow.
It can be an addiction for some kids, and that's why I cannot stand it, because what is it doing to our kids? In that sense. Yeah. They're chasing that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as if you're chasing that high from something else.
Wow.
And I'm a strong believer of that is the major shift in our society with our teenagers is the access to internet and social media.
Wow.
Because the other things like home, absent parents, like that's always been around. The thing that's changed is the easy access to internet and social media.
That's so true. Wow.
I remember reading about, this was maybe 2-3 years ago, this famous TikToker. She's 18 or was 18, had something like 13 million followers or something insane. Wow. Millions of followers. 18 years old, commits suicide. I and it's like, okay, if social media is good for our children, why does that happen? You know, like, why? Because I'm with you, Nancy, or we're with you. You're like, we definitely think that there's a right age or a right maturity, right? Because maturity doesn't come with age. I've met very mature teens and I've met very immature adults. So what's up with that? Like, what could have driven her, this super famous TikTok or whatever? I don't know what kind of stuff she did. I don't know if she did makeup. I don't know if she did dancing. I don't know. I don't even remember the name of the girl, virtually. But you see that a lot of these quote unquote famous TikTokers or famous YouTubers or whatever. They're talking about they're anxious, they're depressed. Is that all it is? It's just that the dopamine
Have you guys ever been on TikTok?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you imagine? Because people on TikTok are vicious.
Really?
Like, if you make them mad, they will inundate you they'll try to they'll try to cancel you.
Oh.
So they'll inundate with videos talking about how can you imagine an 18-year-old that probably already struggles, because most 18-year-olds, especially girls, struggle with some kind of insecurity, some kind of self-esteem issue.
Okay.
It's girls just naturally struggle with self-esteem, no matter what, because I think that has to do with just unrealistic beauty standards that we've always been exposed to, even on TV, even before social media, right?
Yeah.
But can you imagine, like, an 18-year-old, probably already struggles with self-esteem issues, and then gets inundated with hate, and then not just by one or two, by thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
Wow.
Can you imagine what that would do to somebody? That would push anybody over the edge.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, you have to be a very, very strong individual to decide to put yourself out there in front of millions and millions of people, because you're going to get hate.
That's true.
If you take one wrong step that somebody doesn't like, it's like a ripple effect. That's the terrible part about social media, is that it takes one mistake, one wrong word, one anything to cause a ripple effect to where you get bombarded with hate. And that would cause anybody. Nobody could take that. Even the strongest person would probably crumble.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Can you imagine somebody that's 18 that's still trying to figure herself out, that's still trying to figure her life out? It doesn't surprise me. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so hard about social media, is that's the scary part about social media, is that people behind a keyboard, behind your phone, can sit there and push you to a point without even ever seeing their faces to a point of that. And that hurts me, because it's like, that's not the world we should be allowing our kids to grow up in. It's so scary.
And for them to take so serious the words or the opinion of someone that they've never met, that they're never gonna meet, yet their words cut so deep.
And I think that's what the internet and social media has done to our society, is we've made it so disconnected. Like, I remember as a teenager, like, I would go and meet my friends at school outside at the corner store or whatever. Like, now it's all through social media. Like, that's where you get this gratification from, is how many people that you can have friends with on social media, but never in person. And it's just, it makes me sad, because it's because we are wired for connection. And I think that we're getting more separate from that connection because of the access to the internet and social media. For sure. And I don't think teenagers know how to really connect with people on a personal face-to-face level anymore as we used to when we were kids, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that topples over to the idea of them needing this, you know, it's like almost like, because you sit there and you're like, why are you these people are strangers, but these are the world that these kids are living in.
Right.
They don't know the difference between face-to-face interactions over and then the computer, because that's what they're so used to now. They're growing up like that.
Yeah. Ouch.
It's sad, right?
Wow.
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I was bullied in high school, but it was the girls I would run into, and they would make smart remarks, and I can't imagine on social media 10 times, like tenfold. Like, oh no.
No, it's scary. And I'm like, I know I wouldn't have survived because I am a very, like, because I was always bullied. I was always, you know, and so, like, I would take it, but then I would go home and I'd have my friends and I'd have my, you know, the people that actually liked me, right? But I didn't have a screen to remind me when I was home of all the hate. I would only have to deal with it when I'd have to see that person face to face. Yeah. Like, and then the kids become like so almost like addicted. So they're sitting there late at night. Yeah. Scrolling and scrolling. So it's constant, like it's a constantly in your face.
Right there. Yeah. Very true.
Wow. Well, I know with the boys, they, you know, YouTube and YouTube and YouTube and YouTube, which is cool. I mean, you know, they watch like gaming and workouts and football drills and whatever. The next up and coming college recruits, the type of catches that they make or whatever. But, you know, when they hit the dinner table and, hey, the guy's dinner's ready, come sit down. Here they come with their phones. They sit down and then they're watching their phone while they're eating. And I'm like, guys, no phones on the table. Oh, my bad, Dad. And then they turn it off and then, yeah, that's it. So, you know, we're more intentional about having dinner as a family and just having conversations, no phones, right? Yeah. But man, thank you so much for touching on that, like how technology, a phone in a teenager's hand is a definite double-edged sword. More erring, and this is for parents if you're listening, you know, err on the side of caution. And, you know, if you have a teenager, chances are you might want to be extra vigilant about their social media. For sure. You know, for their mental health, their mental sake and capacity. Because like you said, their brains aren't even fully developed. And they're over here, you know, oh, who can have more followers and who can have more likes? And, you know, that literally becomes like their self-image. I know adults like that. That, you know, they just want more likes and more followers. And
I mean, I was guilty of it, you know, before, where I was like, I would post a selfie and I started realizing like, oh my gosh, I only got these many likes. Why? If I have these many friends. So yeah, I mean, if I had that effect or that feeling like, oh man, I should have gotten more likes, I can't imagine a teenager. Yeah. Like our kids are 15 and 16 and they're not allowed to have social media yet. And
they've asked.
Plenty of
sure they are.
All my friends have Instagram, Dad. When are we going to be able to have Instagram? And I was like, well, I'm not telling you no, but if you want Instagram, I want straight A's. And they're like, all right. Do they get straight A's?
Not yet.
When they get that, then we'll have a conversation. But until then, you know, that's what it is.
I know.
And it's, you know, it's one of those hard calls, man, as a parent, where you're like, look, you know, do I need to teach you how to drive? Yes. Do you need to learn in my brand new Ferrari? Probably not. You know, it's one of those where it's like, you need to, you know, measure, I guess, the maturity it's on a case by case basis, but for the most part, yeah, social media is just probably not a good idea.
No, I don't recommend social media to anybody
Even if it's popular.
unless you're an adult.
Yeah.
And even then,
Right.
I don't think some adults could handle social media.
I know.
Yeah.
So, again, clinically speaking, or professionally speaking, in the area that you've studied, what type of trauma can be developed if a teenager goes down the wrong rabbit hole, social media wise? Like, what is there a name to that? Like, where you start getting addicted to,
No, trauma's trauma. There's
Oh, okay.
really no but I'm saying self-esteem and depression, anxiety, all of those are correlated with uses of social media.
Gotcha.
I think where trauma comes into play with social media and with the internet is the inundated information about what goes on in the world, because I think that's where trauma comes in, because it has to be traumatic for any child that is a school age to go to school and to hear about another school shooting or to hear about something like that happen, right? It can cause anxiety in kids. And anxiety in kids scared to go to school, that is correlated to trauma of knowing that a school shooting can happen. And so, it's just different, but there's not specific names for trauma's trauma.
Okay.
It just comes out in different forms, and it's especially people that have lived a trauma, like lived a school shooting, or the people that, experienced the shooting here in El Paso, probably have PTSD from the shooting. And that is a complex situation, But yeah, no, trauma is, I think trauma correlated to social media, has to be like a traumatic event that they're having to, because if you scroll through TikTok after a shooting, that's all you're going to get.
Right.
Is videos about the shooting.
The algorithms.
Yeah. Is videos about the shooting. So they're going to sit there and look at a million of those and have to deal with that.
Right.
And probably get anxiety about going to school the next day.
Right.
And that is a reaction to them being traumatized by that event.
Yeah.
There's a popular at least for El Paso, it's like a news media outlet kind of. It's like what's happening in El Paso on Instagram. It's called FitFem.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So that's where Natalie and I kind of find out stuff, because we don't like watching the news at all. We don't watch news, period. So we're like, if something happens, it's going to come out on FitFem for sure. So shout out, for keeping us informed there.
It's more of a chisme outlet than anything.
Well, I mean, everything that's happened, for example, every time there's a school lockdown in a high school,
that's how we find out.
That's how we find out.
Yeah.
Updates, that's how we find out.
Yeah.
Lost dogs and events or whatever. But anyway, that's what I was going to ask you, Nancy, is, on the, thanks to this channel or account, whatever, we have seen a lot of let's just call it, for lack of better words, teenagers going wild in El Paso. Shootings, the mall, what happened recently. I mean, unfortunately, the whole when El Paso Strong was born in that Walmart down there, I saw a group of kids in a car, and this guy's driving down I-10. He probably looked 17, 18, and he starts shooting a gun outside, just out the window onto oncoming traffic on the other side of I-10. All these school lockdowns, because there's threats, whether real or not real. So from your perspective, why are teens even doing this type of stuff?
public attention.
Yeah.
Which is linked to social media.
It's linked to social media. I'm telling you, I'm like, a lot of the problems that we see today with teens, I can almost bet you that they're linked to some kind of social media, whether it be they're doing it for clout, they saw somebody else do it, they thought it was funny. Like, we can go on a whole conversation about guns. But it was funny because I read an article one time about, it was like a blog about a lady that had moved from New York to Texas. And she lived in New York City. And you think, like, you read about New York City. There's a lot of weird things that happen in New York City. But she had said something that I thought was kind of like crazy. She's like, I have never felt so unsafe as I have when I moved to Texas. And I was like, and she said this, and she was like, I'm afraid to raise my kids in Texas. Like, I wish I could go back to New York.
Oh, wow.
And so she went on like a whole rant, and it was access to firearms, which was scary for her because in New York City, it's not as accessible. Firearms are not as accessible than Texas. And so she was like, I'm just afraid, like, because that's a thing. Like, it's like a mixture of things. You know, you have kids that are rebellious, that don't have supervision, and that have access to internet and social media, that do things like outrageous things for clout or for attention. And then you mix in the fact that a lot of their parents have firearms in the house. What do you think happens?
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
It's like a ripple effect, right? And I think that's the scariest part about the world we live in. Because I don't think that it's like it's yes, of course, it's a gun problem, but I don't like to get political, so we won't go there. But it's a mixture of things, and guns should not be added into this conclusion, right? Especially for kids that are teenagers, especially for kids that have lack of supervision and have access to things that they want to be cool about, right? And so I think that has a lot to do with it. They're out there running wild, probably for attention, and unfortunately, we live in because if you think about when we grew up, our parents didn't understand us, right? Well, now we're going on another culture where social media is just progressing and the internet's progressing, and the parents that are raising these children cannot keep up. And so I'm pretty sure they're unsupervised. You know, and now they're running amok.
Do you think that it's basically just lazy parenting? Could that be that they're just giving the phone to the kid, that way they just, you know, stay distracted and stay quiet? Because I've seen it, you know, with, you know, a ton of parents just giving an iPad to their kid, or, you know, I'm trying to have a party here, I'm trying to have a conversation here's my phone, and then they just start watching, you know, channels and YouTube or whatever, and they're peace and quiet right there, but they're, you know, the parent isn't really supervising what is being shown on that screen, what is being talked about, you know. What do you think?
Oh yeah, like I think that the kids now have a vessel of information that's not being monitored. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and parents can't, they just don't do it. They're just like, like, we didn't have access to all of those things at all. And we still got in trouble. Can you imagine having access to all of this information, to all these things,
Right.
what kind of trouble you get into.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like I think it has a lot to do with parents not monitoring what their kids do, because it's like when we were younger, although I ran wild because I didn't, have supervision either, but I couldn't imagine what my world would have been like with a phone and social media and access to all this information that wasn't being monitored, because you don't know what comes up on those things if they're not monitored.
Right.
It can be a scary, scary place.
Yeah.
And so I think that parents don't realize the implications of the internet, just the internet as a whole, on their child. And, and then we end up having things that are terrible, and mental health is an issue as well. Everywhere we go.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of...
Yeah.
A lot of
factors. It's a lot of factors, I think, that come into play, with kids nowadays.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're not going to see the aftermath or the byproduct of so much internet, so accessible, so much social media until 50 years later. Like, it's so brand new that it's too early to study. You can't pull a study right now to say, because of social media, I don't know, 80% of children now need therapy, or because of social media, because of the internet, because your child was on an iPad 5 hours a day growing up because you didn't want to hear a child screaming or whatever. Now they need, I don't know, 5 more years of high school. I don't know, I'm just making up stuff, right? But what I'm saying is, because we don't know the repercussion and the consequence of all this stuff being accessible to our children, we don't know how it's being affected. Wouldn't it be better to just be more cautious and be more intentional about, let me set up your little device with all these blocks and all these filters and all this, to make it quote unquote safe for you. And after you hit a certain time limit, boom, it turns off, and that's it. You're done for the day. Let's color, let's draw, let's, play a guitar, let's learn how to sing. I don't know.
I think parents are more too focused on becoming their friends instead of parenting.
Yeah.
Like, they're not. I think nowadays it goes back to doing the work.
Yeah. No, it's so...
Say it, Nancy, say it.
Well, it's because I'm going to have to talk about my sister a little bit. So hopefully she does not hear this podcast. I will not show it to her. So my sister's raising a teenager in the Pacific Northwest. So that's a different atmosphere. It's a different environment. It's a different culture. They're white, and their white parents did not love their children properly, and they still don't. So the kids are very complicated, and not like, it's a totally different. The issues that they deal with up there is completely different than what we deal with here, and it's just the culture that they grew up in, right?
Okay.
Well, he's dealing with, and we could go on another conversation about this, and this is for another time, so we won't get into labels or, but he's struggling with his sexuality, right? Okay. He doesn't know, he's flip-flopped a lot. Okay. And right now he's they, them, which the pronouns that he chooses to go on. But what she has found is that he likes individuals that are very and I say he, and I should be saying they, but he likes individuals that are very like him that are struggling, that are kind of tormented, that have been through a lot of significant trauma. Like his other friend wants to be a he and had dealt with a lot of things and all this stuff. And so my sister spent the whole time, because he was an only child, because she has because of our mother, she has a very tormented relationship with her mother. So she was terrified to have that type of relationship with her son. So she became his friend, right? So when he was, so now that she's dealing with all of this, she's trying to parent him. So what does he do? He throws his pronouns in her face. You don't accept me. You don't. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I could not imagine having to deal with that. Because it's like these kids are using this tool that they have found, and they're using it against their parents.
Yep.
So that they don't get parented by saying that you're misgendering me and that you're this and you're that. And I can go down a rabbit hole about this whole idea.
Yeah.
But we're not going to touch there because we'd be here for another hour. But I'm just saying, like, these kids are now having these tools in their hands, and they're almost using it against their parents.
Yeah.
As an act of discrimination towards them. They're like, you're discriminating against me. You're doing this, you're doing that. And I'm like, and it's just mind-boggling.
Right.
And I'm like, yes. And now she's reaping the effects of that. She spent all this time trying to be his friend. And now when she's turning around trying to parent him, he's doing this. And it's like, it is...
That's tough.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. Every time I just don't even know what to say to her anymore, because I feel for her. And it's a totally different world up there. Like, the things that the teenagers are dealing with up there are very different than what we deal with here. It's just crazy how different it is.
Wow.
But the whole gendering thing is very big up there. Wow. Very big.
Yeah. I was just hearing on the radio today, they were talking about how should parents have a say in what a public school is teaching your child. And believe it or not, there's parents that say, no, we trust the school system 100%, the public school system 100%. We trust that, what they're educating my child in, my kindergarten, first, second grade, third grade child in, is proper for their age, and anything less of that is, if you speak against that, then you're being a racist, or you're being a bigot, because why shouldn't my kindergartner learn about gender identity? And it's like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, they're tasting crayons at this
eating crayons.
They're shoving Legos up their nose, right? Like, they have no sweet clue, what's love. So I thought it was a very interesting thought process from a lot of parents, dude, that they were calling into this radio station. I'm not gonna say the name of the radio station, but oh my gosh, I was like, really? Like, wow, and I guess that's the biggest difference. And like you said, we won't get political, but I guess that's a big difference between one side and the other, is that one side has blind faith in the government 100%. They trust 100%. And the other side says, no way. I get to say what my kid gets taught. Like, just teach arithmetic. Just go back to reading, writing, math, science, history, let's just keep it there. There's a time and a place to teach. I think I was a sophomore maybe when it was the first sex ed class that I remember in our high school. We went to Parkland, and that I do remember. I kind of. Well, let me put it like this. All I remember from this sex ed class was STDs. And they had no, truly, I'm telling you the truth.
What traumatized you?
Yeah, like this is what I remember from that class is they came in and they showed a bunch of pictures of the different types of STDs and what they look like, and I was disgusted. I was like, "Are you kidding me, dude?"
Traumatized you.
There is like, wow, like I'm gonna be celibate till I'm married. You know, I was like, "Oh my gosh." This is so I remember that. Oh, and then what was her name? She used to teach like cooking, and then you got like a plastic baby that you had to carry around in school. Miss Anaya.
Anaya. Mm-hmm.
She had a class where it was like you're a fake parent.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I think a lot of the schools had that. I think we did. I never took the class, but I think we did it.
They give you like a baby that you have to, it has an alarm, I think, and it cries in the middle of the night, and you have to feed it allegedly.
Yeah, just like having a child, like how it is to have a child.
So I remember that. But back to your point, Nancy, like, there's just this whole thing. I think it's more of a trend now than an actual scientific, biological.
Oh no! Yeah,
mental health thing.
Because obviously we learn about body dysmorphia and about all these things as a psychology student, and so I get the psychology behind being transgender. I get that. I do, and I get it. I think where I get lost is everything else. And I think it goes back to excessive amount of information that is given to kids they don't know what to do with. So I think it confuses them, and that's my opinion. It's and I think that's where it comes from. But I think it's just ironic that they now use it as a tool to get what they want when they want, and by saying you're discriminating, it's manipulative, and it's just crazy. And I'm like, and it's just so shocking. I'm like, wow, like these are the kids nowadays. Like I'm scared. I'm scared for my teenage son. Like when he becomes a teenager, if this is the stuff he's gonna have to deal with, because it's crazy to me. But I think it's an excessive amount of information that I don't think they know how to fully grasp or categorize anything anymore.
And I was telling Art last time that I think we're not going to see the effects of this until I think when our kids are about our age. They're going to see all this, and they're going to have to deal with all that,
Yeah, I'll have to send it to you, but it's like a 2-hour interview podcast about a girl that transitioned to be a boy and is now detransitioning to be back to a girl. And her point, which I thought was pretty interesting in the podcast, was that teenagers is such a vital age, and it's such a delicate age that it shouldn't be a stepping stone for any kind of transition in life, because you're dealing with a lot. Hormones, self-esteem. A lot of teenagers don't feel like they're in the right body because they're going through a lot of changes.
Right.
And so that was like the main gist. But it's like a 2-hour long podcast. Wow. But it's like the main gist of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the guy doing the podcast like quoted somebody else saying that he doesn't think that any transition of any kind should happen until they're adults.
I have to kind of agree on that.
So it was an interesting take, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I mean, dude, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be a pirate. Like, I'm glad that my parents weren't like, hey, let's go get your leg chopped off and your eye removed and get you a patch, and a wooden peg because, and I'm sorry, I don't mean it to come off, but please, like, if you're listening, we sympathize with, everyone going through a legit mental, um, identity struggle or whatnot, like, but, like in Natalie's and I's, opinion, dude, God made you perfect, man. He made you, the way you are for a reason. You're, a biological boy, a biological girl, for a purpose. Once you die and they bury your body, they can physically look at your bones and determine your sex. Like they can't go back and ask you what you felt like. They'll say, this was a biological female, this was a biological male, whatever. And please don't misunderstand us. There's zero judgment from us. Like we don't judge anybody, man. Like, we love you. We love you all the same. Everybody.
I hope that didn't come off as insensitive.
I'm trying to be. No, I wasn't trying to be. I'm just, making sure that, we don't get misunderstood, right? Like, or get placed in on a red flag somewhere. Nothing like that. It's just, we're discussing, mental health and stuff like this. So
we went on a tangent. I'm so sorry.
No, dude, like it's that's what this is about, just to kind of talk, to say what everyone's thinking, but no one wants to say type of thing. This is a safe space, man. So back to that point that you were saying, that a video podcast of 2 hours, and then the person that transitioned, but then it started to detransition back to their original sex. They mentioned that the teenage phase is very delicate. So, in your professional opinion, would you say that, people that are kind of thinking about that type of stuff, maybe thinking that maybe they were born in the wrong body or feeling a different way or whatever, do you think that links to some type of trauma?
Oof. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that any kind of, because essentially, from what I understand, like, they have some sort of body dysmorphia, meaning they look at themselves in the mirror, they don't see what they're supposed to see, right? Mm. And so, and I think that it can lead to, stem from like trauma, because when you do that, you essentially disassociate yourself from yourself, right? And that can stem from trauma. Sometimes it's just, people are born and they just don't feel. And I know there's cases like that, and I'm not trying to, and I know it's possible, and I respect everybody for their choices in that matter. But I do feel like sometimes when you are, and that's why I think therapy is so important in a situation like that. You need to find the root cause of anything before you make a big life decision like that.
Yeah.
You can't just jump in and be like, okay. And that's why, I think it's very important for parents to understand that, therapy before anything major happens should always happen, because you need to find the root cause of anything. Right. And if it's and if you have a good therapist or a psychologist, and they can sit there and tell you that there's no root cause, there's no leading trauma, this person just really feels like they need this, then you go from there. But I don't think that it always should be a jump from A to B right away.
Right.
But yeah, I do think that's, anything that has to do with not feeling right or dissociation or body dysmorphia, like, I think it can, and the sad thing is, it's probably something that is super traumatic, like sexual assault or anything like that, which is the sad part.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, shoot. I got when I was 23, I got a tattoo on my forearm that I regret.
What is it?
It's a bull. It's this right here. It's Taurus. Uh-huh. Like, if you guys are into horoscopes or whatever. I grew up on that, because my mom, typical, Hispanic mom, ay, ahí está Walter Mercado, y cállate porque Walter, Walter is going to talk and his word is gold, hold on, shut up, let me see what he says.
Yeah.
And, he's turning in his robe and, Tauro, Virgo, Acuario, tú vas a estar muy, bendecido este día or whatever. I don't know, whatever. So I grew up on this identity of I'm a Taurus, and this and that. So anyway, if we as adults make decisions that we regret later,
Right.
can you imagine children, right? So anyways, anything else you want to say, Mama?
No, I mean, this is awesome. Like, you're asking the question, so I love it. Yeah. No, this is perfect. Like, great information.
Yeah.
Everything you said had to be said.
Yeah.
And you opening up to us, to the public, to our listeners.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. So that's what we need to hear. And thank you so much.
Oh,
I really appreciate it.
Any lasting questions? Just kidding.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Nancy, for your time and for joining us, for being so vulnerable, for sharing about your past. Like, it's not easy, to be transparent and to be vulnerable, but I know that's something that Natalie and I really appreciate. Our motto is like glass house mentality. Like, who you are when the door closes is the same person that you are, in public. You're not swapping identities of like, oh, I'm the perfect, Christian couple right now in the public, but then I come home and then I treat my family like garbage. You know what I mean? Like, we're not doing that. We're one people all the time, and what you see is what you get.
No.
So.
No, thank you. I've never done a podcast before, so this is
Awesome.
this was a great experience.
First
But
time.
no, I really appreciate you guys like having me here. I hope that I was able to add some kind of substance to your podcast.
Of course,
And and if you guys ever have any follow-up questions, just ask me. And
For sure.
Yeah, let us know. I know on our posts, when we post every Tuesday, like when we have a new episode. So we always tag the people that come onto the podcast. So we'll tag you, and if people want to follow up with you, questions, maybe they'll reach out to you maybe to see, hey, like, I really liked what you said, where can I go to seek some professional help or whatnot. They might hit you up and stuff like that. So that'll be awesome. Oh. And if you're listening out there, if you're struggling, mental health, if you feel like you have some trauma, some unresolved trauma, even if you think, do I? Chances are you probably do, because like we said in the beginning, no one's perfect, but our biggest, Natalie's and I's biggest message is Jesus loves you, man. God loves you the way you are. It's a lot of his 12 disciples were, one of them was a traitor. The other one used to be a murderer, and he still forgave them. They still ate at the table. Yeah. So God's love is unmeasurable, man. Like, don't ever feel like you're not loved by anybody. There's a Father in heaven that absolutely loves you, man. But we'll close up. Thank you guys for listening. Yay. And
thank you.
Stay tuned for the next one, guys. Have a great one. Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.